The versatility these types of players provide has, at least to the perception of these teams,
Drew Holiday
outweighed
hasn't been
the
the same
unique
since he
skill
got
sets
dunked
of
on by
players
Luka.
and their roles from the past.
Bitch got a 4-round spark up the black. Why would you lie? You know I know the real. I look you in your eyes and I can tell just how.
Whiskey too. Boy Caleb will be back with another video. Today we got Jimmy Harrover. What did I just witness? Let's get
Start off a lot quicker. Spurs harass Wallace into a turnover and
Did y'all just see that? Right here. This isn't normal.
This don't
Victor
even make sense
Wembanyama
right there.
is standing near the three-point line and in one step manages to extend his arm like a selfie stick and pick the ball loose beyond the free throw line. This reach, from where his left foot is to where his right hand is about 9 feet.
Dang.
Which means in just one step, Victor can cover this much space on the court. If I wasn't familiar with Wembanyama and his freakish length, I'd think the Spurs drafted an alien, and Victor is the exception. But standing right over here on the wing,
I think they did draft an alien.
7'1" unicorn that has the tools to do things with his length that shouldn't be possible. In fact, it feels like these ultra-sized Swiss Army knives are becoming more and more
That was
common
crazy.
around the league. From oversized guards to point forwards to 7'4" big men calling for lobs at the three-point line, it feels like there's more size in the NBA today than ever before. Is the NBA getting bigger? Well, there's only one way to find out.
W ad, we already know what's coming. Oh, they got me turning the volume up.
Walter was a solid
Yeah.
NBA player throughout the 50s and early 60s. But what makes Walter special is that he was the
Dang,
very
bro.
first 7-footer in the NBA when he was drafted in 1955. Basketball players have always been known for their stature, but when Walter was playing, he wasn't just considered tall, he was a one of one, a spectacle, and he would remain the only
The first
7-footer in
7-footer?
the NBA until a talented prospect out of Philadelphia was drafted in 1959.
Wilt Chamberlain.
Named Wilt Chamberlain. The following season, in 1960, 7'3" Harvey Holbrook joined the NBA and would remain the tallest player in the history of the league up until 1982, when the Utah Jazz drafted 7'4" Mark Eaton. 7-footers used to be extremely rare. Landing a player whose height began with a 7 used to mean winning the jackpot. But in today's NBA, 7-footers and positional supersized players have become so common that not having one can be detrimental. The future of the league and the sport itself is pointing in one very obvious, inevitable direction. More size and more length, which really got me thinking, is the NBA getting taller? Has every position around the league seen an influx in size from combo guards to point forwards, all the way
mean, it's
to
just different
7-foot
people.
do-it-all demigods?
But yeah, I guess you
This
could say it's
matchup
getting taller,
between
right?
Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren just an anomaly in the NBA's timeline, or will players like this eventually become the new norm 20, 30 years from now? Well, here are the average heights across the NBA for each position 30 years ago in 1993. Here are those positions and measurements
1993.
in 2003 and in 2013 and in 2023. And over the course of 3 decades, not much has changed. The traditional size standards throughout the NBA suggest point guards are usually about 6'2", shooting guards are about 6'5", small forwards are 6'7", power forwards are 6'9", and centers are about 6'11". And this generally remains the case to this day, although there are some small fluctuations around the edges. Point guards are nearly 2 inches taller today than they were in 1993, but centers are an inch shorter today than they were in 1993.
Because they be
In
shooting.
1993, the difference between a point guard and a center, on average, was nearly a foot. Today, that difference has shrunk to just 7 inches.
Dang.
In fact,
That's
this
crazy.
change, the homogenization
So
of
it's
the
not
league
getting
and the
bigger
size
now.
of its players, is by design. When you chart size in the NBA, it comes out like this. A bell curve. Not a lot of small guys, not a whole lot of big guys, and a lot of guys in the middle. But if you compare the size data from the league in 2023 and the size data from the league in 1993, the evolution of the league and its players becomes a lot more clear. In both of these seasons, the average height of players across the league is exactly the same, 6 feet 6.7 inches. That would suggest that
That's
things
crazy.
really haven't changed over the last 30 years. But once you see how that size is distributed, you can get a better understanding of the evolution of the game. size used to be almost evenly spread out. You've got your traditional point guards, your traditional rim protectors, you've got your wings and your slashers. They each had a distinct role on the court, and with a handful of exceptions, usually their size determined their role, for better or for worse. But in today's NBA, thanks to advanced analytics,
Oh my
better
goodness.
schemes, and more data at the league's disposal, those roles and positions are becoming more and more obsolete. It's not the size that's changing,
Now what?
it's how we value and use size that's changing. In 2023, the most common height in the league is 6'5", and this range right here, the middle guys, the Swiss Army knives, makes up nearly 60% of all players. In 1993, the most common height was 6'9". Those
Dang.
middlemen made up just 43% of the league. The NBA has become condensed, where falling somewhere in the middle of size and skill set has almost become a valuable commodity. And the reason for this is actually very simple. Versatility. Introduction of the 3-second rule in 2001 that forced big men to leave the paint on defense, and the three-point era that has brought offense further and further away from the rim. Teams can no longer afford to have players on their roster with hyper-specific sizes and roles. Having guards smaller than 6'2" can leave a massive hole in your defense on the perimeter. Defensive schemes in today's league are designed to find the mismatch.
Dang, not a player above 6'8".
Players like Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young, and Darius Garland are able to mitigate this liability with their offensive output, but the liability still remains. Having big, burling centers on your roster used to be a viable strategy, but now that the game has forced them outside of the paint, they too have become a nuisance on defense with screen-heavy offensive schemes and switches. The solution to this problem? Players who fall right in between those two extremes. Guys who are quick enough to defend the perimeter but have enough size to not fall into a mismatch with big men. LeBron James is the prototype for this kind of player, but since he entered the league in 2003, these attributes have become increasingly more common and valuable. The rule changes that took place in the late 90s and 2000s completely altered the makeup of rosters and have turned rosters like this, with a large variation of size and skills, into this, a roster that is made up of a bunch of all-in-one talents with a few specialty players around the edges. But those are just the defensive implications of having a one-size-fits-all roster in the NBA. On offense, this evolution is just as glaring. Since 2014, the NBA has been keeping track of advanced player data like speed, distance, individual time of possession. These statistics are called tracking data. And according to this data, here are the players who had the most touches per game in the NBA 10 years ago. And tell me if you notice a theme going on here. It's pretty obvious, right? Almost every player near the top of the leaderboard is small. Most of them 6'3" or shorter. And this is how it's been since the game was created. Until recently. Because here are the touches per game leaders from this past season, with only a handful of players under 6'3" cracking the leaderboard. In fact, in 2014, there were only 7 players out of the top 35 leaders who were at least 6'5". In 2023, 21 of the top 35 players were at least 6'5".
The NBA just got more versatile. That's all it is.
Designated point guard or the guy who has the best handle. Teams now are just letting their best player handle the ball most of the time. It feels like guards have gotten bigger and taller because they have.
Kemba
Not
Walker
because
was
the
getting the
league is
most
getting
touches
taller,
in 2014.
but
That's
because
crazy.
instead of letting the little guy handle the rock, they're just letting their best player handle the rock. And the best players tend to be bigger, or at least average in size. These guys used to have a specific role, but now that they've lost
jump
that
shot
role
was
thanks
crazy.
to new offensive schemes and tactics, their value has been minimized. Similar to defense, versatility has taken the place of specialized skill sets on offense. If you're really good, we'll just teach you how to handle the ball and run the offense. Doesn't matter if you're 6'5" or 7 feet. The NBA isn't getting any bigger, it's getting more uniform. So where does that leave us with these guys? Will we inevitably see more 7-footers with the ability to bring the ball up the floor, protect the rim, and pull up from 25 feet? Probably not. In fact, the only reason why we didn't see players of this size with this skill set sooner wasn't because they didn't exist. It's because they weren't even allowed to do this stuff before. Check out this video of Shaquille O'Neal at practice in 1996. The skills were there, but putting a 7-foot 1-inch monster on the perimeter in the 90s would have been blasphemy. Here's a clip
Now,
of
Scotty.
7-foot Kevin Garnett handling on-ball pressure and using guard-like skills to get a bucket. If these two, as well as many other great bigs from the past, were given the green light to run an offense and handle the ball, they could have done it. And if Wemby and Chet were born 30 years sooner, they would have been relegated to the post like the players that came before them. But even with teams moving towards, even searching for players with guard-like skills, finding those big players with guard-like skills is still a tall task. Kristaps Porzingis came into the league as a 7-foot 3-inch wingman who fit well within the Kevin Durant archetype, could handle the ball and shoot it from outside, but over his career he has settled into a more traditional stretch big man role, where he has found vastly more success. Another example is Bol Bol, who has all the physical tools to be like a Chet or a Wemby, and yet 4 years into his NBA career and we have yet to see him shine in that role. We may not see more players with this particular blend of size and skill for a while. These guys are outliers. The goal here is size and shooting and switchability. If you can get super size with all of those skills, well, that's just icing on the cake. The versatility these types of players provide has, at least to the perception of these teams,
Jrue Holiday hasn't been the same since he got dunked on by Luka.
Their roles from the past. With homogenization
Right or wrong.
comes adaptability and switchability.
He.
With this evolution came the extinction
Oh
of
my goodness,
most
Ja.
hyper-specific, highly volatile sizes and roles. And this data right here may demonstrate this evolution better than anything else. It's a chart of every player in the NBA in the 1996-1997 season based on height and weight. And as we touched on before, there was no shortage of variety in the league 25 years ago. Way down here is the smallest player in NBA history, 5'3" Muggsy Bogues.
Man, I'd be cooking Muggsy Bogues, bro. I promise, bro.
Never see another player like this in the NBA again. And on the complete opposite end of the spectrum is George Murison, the largest player in NBA history.
I'd be cooking him too.
Priest Lauderdale, a 7'4"
Last name Lauderdale, I'm definitely giving you 40.
behemoth of a man.
I ain't giving
Also
Shaq
got
40 though.
7'6" Sean Bradley. Here's 7'1", 300-pound Shaquille O'Neal. But the majority of players in 1997 fell within this range of size, about 6'8", 6'9", 230 pounds. And now here is every player from the 2022-2023 NBA season. All those big enforcers that used to live in the paint have been drastically thinned out. The small guys are still around, but not nearly as much as they used to be. And in the place of those players are these players, who are somewhere in between big and small and can do a whole lot of both. The NBA isn't getting bigger, it's actually getting more
Versatile.
average.
Oh,
Yeah. And here's Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren. Two extraordinary outliers in a league that has become...
bro, Chet only 185 pounds. I can barely see that. Am I seeing that right? That's got to be cap. Hey, W video though, Jimmy. If y'all enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next.
Bitch got a 4-round spark up the black. Why would you lie? You know I know the real. I look you in your eyes and I can tell just how you feel.